Zakat. There's been a lot of questions. Is my 401k eligible? What about if I have some other investment? Are they eligible? How do I calculate based on that? What about the loan on my house? Can I subtract that? So these are questions that kept coming up, and consequently, we invited him to give us a talk about this.
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so what I will do, inshallah, I will go over some basic regulations about zakat. Then I will address some specific issues, and then we can open for questions. So, zakat, as we know, is one of the central rituals of Islam, one of the 5 pillars. And while there is no fixed time for zakat being due, each person potentially can have their own due date. But nevertheless, a lot of people like to pay zakat during Ramadan to try to gain the blessings of Ramadan and inshallah extra reward. Okay, so since zakat is an important duty of Islam, there is great reward. There are many verses about rewards for spending in the path of Allah. And similarly, there is great punishment for those who consciously refuse to pay zakat. We don't have time to read these ayat. Slideshow mode.
Not too many people, so we can make it.
What's happening? Okay. Okay. So, who has to pay zakat? Adults, sane, free Muslims. In other words, excluding insane people, excluding children, although there's disagreement among the fuqaha. For the Hanafi school, for example, there is no zakat due on the wealth of children, even if they have a lot of money, until they become adult, until they reach the age of majority. Whereas for the Shafi school, if children have enough money to pay zakat, then zakat is due on them. The second condition for obligation is possession of nisab. Nisab is a threshold amount of money below which no zakat is payable, above which zakat will be due 1 year from that date. So when a person first starts earning money and his money first goes above the nisab, which as we will see is about $650. When your money, your checking account, so for example, first goes above the nisab, you take note of that date, and 1 year after that is when your zakat will be due. So as I said, each person has their own zakat due date, but you can pay, advance pay in zakat in Ramadan if your date is in the future, And if your date was in the past and you have not yet paid, that definitely you should pay as soon as possible, and this would be in Ramadan now. So yeah, these are the three conditions: adult sane Muslims, adult sane free Muslims, possession of the nisab, and passage of 1 year over it. What is zakat due on? What is it payable on? Money, right? Dollars, pounds, euros, whatever. Gold and silver, trade goods, stocks and investments, livestock, produce, buried treasures and minerals. Anyone here who is a farmer? No, so we don't need to talk about livestock, crops, and so on. And probably buried treasures and minerals, this is not relevant to most of us either. So we will focus on the first five: money, gold, silver, trade goods, and investments. It is important to note that zakat is not payable on basic items of personal use. The clothes you wear, even if they are expensive, the car which you use for your daily business, even again, regardless of the cost, and jewelry that is neither gold nor silver. Zakat is not payable on it unless you bought it with the intention of reselling it. For gold and silver jewelry, as is coming up, there's disagreement. The Hanafi school, for example, among other fuqaha, say that zakat is due on gold and silver jewelry if it is more than the nisab, the threshold amount. No zakat on the house that you are living in, regardless of how much it costs. Similarly, on household furniture, tools of one's trade, books for the scholar and student. Okay, gold and silver. What is the nisab for gold and silver? It is given in the hadith in terms of a weight of gold and silver. If you look at the gold and silver prices today, we can compute the dollar equivalent. So for gold, it is about $8,000. That is the nisab. So if you have gold jewelry worth more than that amount, 8,077, then zakat is due on that gold jewelry. If your total gold, jewelry, coins, gold bars, gold certificates, the total value of all the gold you own is less than $8,000 odd dollars, then zakat is not due on it, probably. But if it is worth more than 8,077, then 2.5% of that value is payable in zakat. For silver, the nisab comes to about $618 as of gold silver prices today. I forgot to change the date. I did check update based on today's gold prices and silver prices, so that is also March 1, 2025. How about for cash? There is some disagreement among the scholars, but many scholars, I think even the majority, say you should use the nisab for silver, since this is the lower value. Therefore, you can be sure that you have discharged your obligation, and also it is more beneficial to the poor. This way, more people will actually be paying zakat. So if you have more than $618 in the bank or at home, or in combination between what you have at home in your wallet and in your bank, then zakat is payable at 2.5% again. Common questions relate to money that you have lent and money that you have borrowed. So for money you have lent, according to most of the fuqaha, zakat is payable because it is still your money. If I gave a loan of $1,000 to my friend does not own that money, it is still my money. So when I am calculating my zakat, I should pay zakat on that $1,000, as well as all other money and so on that I have. The only exception is if the borrower defaulted. If you have no hope of getting the money back, for example, then zakat is not payable on that loan. But if you happen to get it back, then you will start paying zakat on it from that time, not retroactively. So money you lent is zakatable, although there's some disagreement. For example, the Shafi said you have to pay zakat on it even before you have gotten it back. Whereas the Hanafis allow you to delay the zakat. You keep calculating the zakat every year, and then when you get that money back, you can pay it retroactively at that point. How about money you borrowed? Personal debts are deductible for the Hanafis, not for the Shafis. So again, disagreement. Shafis reason that if you have a debt due and you have not paid it back, why have you not done that? You should pay it back before you calculate your zakat. But if you still have it in hand, then it is zakatable. How about long-term debts like a car loan or mortgage? Of course, you cannot deduct the full amount. That is by agreement. Otherwise, many well-off people would not be paying any zakat, right? If you buy a house worth 5 million, right, and you have maybe 1 million in the bank, obviously, if you deduct the amount you owe on the house, you will not pay any zakat. So long-term debts are not deductible. But yeah, there's some disagreement. So long-term commercial debts, according to one view, are completely non-deductible. You cannot deduct any portion of them. This is the first view. Second view, you can deduct 1 year of payments. Third view, which is the view I go with, you can deduct only the current month's payment if you have not yet paid it. Okay, jewelry, I think we discussed this already. Disagreements. Hanafis and some others say that gold and silver jewelry is subject to zakat. Okay, trade goods, again 2.5%. So if you have a shop, a store, the merchandise in that shop is considered trade goods, and so you have to pay 2.5% of the value of all the merchandise that, all the unsold merchandise which we have. However, any machinery, for example, for a factory, land, fixtures and fittings, these are all exempt. It is only the merchandise and the raw materials themselves that are subject to zakat. For shares and stocks, yes, in general, this is considered an asset, and it is, you are liable to pay zakat on your investments. And again, it is 2.5% of whatever you have on the due date, the total current market value of these shares. The only exception, according to some fuqaha, is if your investment is in a company that only deals with renting out properties. In that case, according to many fuqaha, you have to pay zakat only on the dividend, not on the total value. But all other types of investments, you have to pay on the current market value of the shares, 2.5% of that. Retirement accounts for 401k, IRA, and so on. Again, there's difference of opinion. So let's see. 3 main views. One view is that since this money is in your name, it is subject to zakat, even though you cannot access it right now. And so according to this first view, you calculate, you include your 401k and IRA and so on, add it to your total assets when you are calculating your zakat, and then it is subject to the same rate, 2.5%. The second view is that although this is your money, you do not have full control over it because you cannot access it right now. And if you do access it, if you do try to withdraw it, you will have to pay a penalty and you will have to pay taxes. So according to the second view, you calculate how much you would get if you withdrew this amount right now. So in other words, the total value of the IRA, subtract from that the penalty for early withdrawal, and subtract also any taxes which would be due. And you do that every year, and this is the zakat which is due. There's at least one other view, but I will not mention it. Maybe if we have time later or in the Q&A, we will see. Okay, so we said that zakat is due on all these categories, but yes, what if you have gold jewelry which is less than the nisab for gold, and you have silver jewelry less than the nisab for silver, and you have cash less than this nisab for cash, but when you add it all together, it comes to more than nisab. Is zakat payable or not? Yes, it is. So you should find the total value of all your assets. So checking account, savings account, gold jewelry, silver jewelry, stocks, investments, IRA, 401k, and so on. Total, take the total of all of that, and if it is more than 618, which I think is the case probably for all of us here, alhamdulillah, then zakat is due from you at 2.5%. Who is the zakat payable to? The 8 categories in the Quran, but of course, for most of us, we simply delegate the payment of zakat. We give it to a charity, for example, to just distribute on our behalf. Note that you are not allowed to pay zakat to someone who is well off, someone who is not poor, nor to your parents, your children, or your wife, nor to your employee, nor to non-Muslims, nor to the household of the Prophet and Banu Hashim more generally. And the preference is to pay zakat locally unless the need somewhere else is bigger. Okay, we don't need to talk about cattle and livestock, so we can stop here. Dr. Faisal told me we can go a few minutes over, but not too much. So it is now 7:59. Is it okay if we have 5 minutes of questions? Yes.
Can we use Zakat to a mosque? You said no institution.
Yes. Yes, I have up there not to institutions. This is the view of many scholars, but there are potential exceptions depending on which view you follow. So if you give it to an institution like Islamic Relief, or even your local masjid, to distribute on your behalf to the poor and needy and so on, there's no issue with that. That is acceptable by agreement. If you give it to an institution like a hospital or school with the instructions to them that they will use it. For example, the hospital will use your zakat money to cover the treatment costs of those who cannot afford treatment. That also is acceptable. Because the final recipients are the poor and needy and so on. But in general, you cannot give it to an institution to use for the institutional costs. Although some contemporary fuqaha have given an exception here for masajid and da'wah organizations in the West, in non-Muslim countries, not in Muslim majority countries. Because in Muslim countries, the Ministry of Awqaf funds the masajid and da'wah and so on, whereas in the West, we don't have that. So some of the contemporary scholars allowed giving zakat money to masajid under that category, although others disagreed.
My question is on jewelry. Gold jewelry and silver jewelry, they're supposed to put zakat on it, which is fine. Then my actual question is, what is the percentage face value that you can do for the gold jewelry and the silver jewelry?
Okay, so for gold and silver jewelry, as we said, there's a disagreement for the Hanafis and some other fuqaha. Zakat is due, and it is 2.5% of the value of that jewelry on the due date. So if your due date is today, then 2.5% of the value of the gold jewelry today.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, Dr. Suheil, that was really useful session. I know that this is something that comes up over and over. Inshallah, we'll have another one. But I think it's time for Isha, inshallah. And we want to thank BIS for helping us. These talks are going to continue. There's one tomorrow, 7:30. So same thing again, inshallah. If everyone here is 7:30, you can see there's a lot of knowledge that we can gain in this month as well. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.